First of all, it's one thing I know to have a magazine and be literary, you know, to give information. It's another thing that the business model for that kind of business is, a lot of it's based on your advertising. So the difference between advertising product and then having to talk about the product internally in the magazine as far as in reviewing it, or you can't straight out give a recommendation. But I mean, do you ever find that some of the stuff that comes out floods the market with unnecessary things, or are a lot of the things coming at you now relevant to what's going on?
I think we had a point, there was a flood starting about 2000 when plugins really started to catch on. And every manufacturer would come out with a version upgrade that was loaded with features. It was all based on they want more features, they want more features, they want the Swiss Army knife of software. When that's not the way our industry really works. Our industry, as you know, will grab an LA2A here, we'll grab a Fairchild limiter here, they have a certain tool for the job that does the job very well. And suddenly, you get bombarded. I had a columnist, Paul Lehrman, who wrote a column about a year and a half ago and said, it was called Stop, Please, just stop loading up the software. It works fine for me. And I mean, Pro Tools made an enormous jump to Pro Tools 7 at the time. And it was very controversial because you suddenly had to update all your hardware. And I had a guy in New York who runs a post-production facility, and he called up and said, I'm quite happy with 6.8, whatever it was at that point. And I have now, in order to upgrade my software, I have to spend $150,000 to upgrade my hardware. And the software doesn't give me anything for my job. But every client, every person who interfaced with them expected it. So he was sort of forced into a feature-laden set with a $150,000 upgrade that didn't help him in his job. It did not help him, but he had to have it if he wanted to keep clients.
We're going to have some questions coming in a second, too. I have two thoughts before I kind of go run around. And I want you to know my recording studio still has ADAT in it. Is one of the components. I do.
ADAT was a great medium.
Wherever I can find it, I buy every tape they have.
Yeah.
So, which leads into what you were saying about the crossover from a physical medium into virtual. Do you also foresee, because I'm not a dinosaur, but I'm still under the belief that people also like this part of it, the tangible part, and perhaps your daughters like the CD for the booklets. Do you anticipate some possible crossing over into something physical as well that lines up with virtual that would, you know?
Oh, I don't mean things will disappear necessarily. Vinyl is actually enjoying a resurgence that we find, that there are still specialty shops. And we used to call them the Laserdisc crowd when I was growing up. That when there was VHS, there was a certain person who spent extra money for their amplifier that got even though you had to get up and flip it over in the middle of a movie, it was a higher quality than VHS, so they did it. You have that audience forever.
Right.
And yes, there will be physical product. I don't mean that it will completely disappear, but it's been almost 8 years since blank CD sales eclipsed pre-recorded CD sales.
Oh, yeah.
It's been about 8 years now.
I wonder how that medium will change, because it will in some regard, but there will still be some physical aspect.
Yeah, and we're driven largely by the film world. I mean, honestly, I mean, I couldn't understand why at the time that the audio industry was fighting for DVD audio, which required a new player and was not backward compatible, and DVD audio was fighting against SACD, and the audience decided neither. Well, what we had there was we had DVD video, which had, it was over 40 million decks in the US alone for DVD video at that point, and you could put 6 channels of audio in the audio zone on that track, and you could add 2 videos. Well, we had a ready acceptance for a greater medium, a higher quality playback medium, if they had just marketed CDs in the DVD vein. It would have worked fabulously. The game industry does not know why we didn't do this. The game industry had DVD built in. They could have played back your music. I mean, the game industry, speaking of, it's a wide open. I hope one of you ask me a question about that, because we're hot on the game industry right now. I mean, they put out a Blu-ray player with PlayStation 3. They put it out at the time when Blu-ray decks were just about $1,200, coming down to $800. PlayStation 3 cost, what, $600 when it was introduced? $699, and then it's down and down and down. But that included a Blu-ray player. You've got 80 million surround systems installed worldwide, and most of them are connected to games and to home theaters.
My other thought before I take off is probably a good profession coming up in the future would be some computer-driven industry, software, hardware, musician, of course, or a lawyer, because of all
the intellectual property issues are going to be huge. I would advocate knowing everything you can about a dual platform, Mac and PC. I mean, everything you can learn, even as a musician.
How can they keep up with it, though, as it changes into?
Chat room. I mean, believe it or not, chat rooms still do very well. I mean, the stuff to stay up on the news. I mean, there's so much information available today. If you're halfway curious, you should be able to keep up on what's coming out for Mac and PC world.
Excellent. Can I take this mic with? Yes? Thank you.
Something, as Lori's walking out there, there's an article in Time magazine. Those students, if you go online to Time, look up an article called Synthetic Authenticity. Synthetic Authenticity. And the article is by James Gilmore and Joseph Pine. And basically, it talks about, regardless of the medium or the fact that it's downloaded, it's about content. It's about that regardless of what the distribution is or what the technology is, there still has to be content. And matter of fact, Tom turned me on to this today, to this particular article. So please look it up. It's about synthetic authenticity.
Well, the reason I pointed out to Andre is that I grew up pre-internet, you know, when our options were given to us by radio. Our options were on, you know, I got cable TV in 1976, I guess, so I got it early for some people. But our options were very, very limited, and we were sort of told what was good. Somebody out there was selecting what was good for us. Today, it's a running joke. When the internet came along in our industry, they said, like, oh, this will democratize the world. You know, anybody can be heard. You don't need to worry about labels. And after about 6 months, we said, yeah, and there's a lot of crap out there, too. You have to go through the clutter. And good quality will emerge, even amidst, you know, 40 million different songs worldwide. And what this article is about is that in this age of bombardment, when we have audio coming at us, when we have video coming at us, whether it's a game, whether it's a product out of Walmart, there's so many options today. Authenticity emerges. And these two guys wrote a book about the idea of what is authentic. And there's a word to look back. And as a musician, I would imagine many of you look for that, whether you call it a unique sound, whether you call it being true to yourself, whether you call it music with soul. Something about that is authentic. And that's what cuts through on the internet. That's what cuts through for distribution.